Thank you very much. So thank you for a lovely introduction as well. That's brilliant. Thank you, Shirley. We're going to talk tonight about Gallipoli. Gallipoli was a campaign in World War One. And it's a long way from Penmaenmawr, a long, long way from Penmaenmawr. And I would imagine that the Quarry boys that went out there in 1915 probably had no idea where they were going to at all. But just to give you an idea, Gallipoli, of course, today is in modern-day Turkey, but would have been part of the Ottoman Empire in 1915, which basically was Turkey and beyond. So I'm sure they had never heard of the place, but just to give you an idea of what it looks like, this is that wonderful Gallipoli map from the graphic. And now, have we got a pointer here? Is there a pointer on this one as well?
Yeah, they put them at the top.
The top, right. No, sorry. Ooh. I'm the kiss of death to anything technical, by the way. So, well, I'll explain it to you anyway. Gallipoli is a peninsula, very much like we have the Clean Peninsula a little bit further down the road. And as you can see, it sticks out into the Aegean Sea. And right at the top is the bit that we're concerned with as well, Suvla Bay. On the top is the left. But I'm a person that likes putting lots and lots of maps, so you'll get a little bit more familiar with Suvla Bay as we go through the talk. Can I just add as well, before I do start, because that's a very, very brief introduction, this is in memory of our lovely friend Dennis as well. I couldn't have done this without him. We worked on this together for years, and you'll see some of the exhibitions and things that we put, as we go through the talk, that we put together over the 25 years odd that we worked on it. So thanks, Dennis. So here we go. Let me start. Right, I'm going back to my dog, Theo. Right, the Penmaenmawr Quarry boys. Dennis and I named it from stone to sand because that seemed appropriate to add to the sort of quarry aspect of it. And they sailed and landed on Suvla Bay in August 1915. The quote below is a quote from an unknown soldier, but he was from the 6th Battalion, Royal Welsh Fusiliers, and sadly he was trying to get some water from a well, and a Turkish sniper shot him. And his last words were, "I have tried to do my duty, so nothing else matters." Now, when I take this talk a little bit further afield, and it's been all over the place, to London, Cardiff, up north, not to Scotland yet, but you never know, I always try to do a little bit of a tourist thing as well. So some of you will know this, you'll be very familiar with the place, but we'll just have a quick look at it as well. In one of the brochures to attract people to come and stay in Penmaenmawr, it names that Penmaenmawr is twixt mountain and sea. Visit Penmaenmawr and postpone your death. From an official guide to Penmaenmawr around about the 1950s. For health's sake, pay us a visit. Hard sell, yeah. It's very much associated with Gladstone. Less well known is Rudolf Steiner, the educationalist, and also we used to have the fantastic Grand Hotel here that attracted many personalities over the years, actors, sportsmen, Americans and such like, that came to stay in Penn because it was a very, very popular resort. I'm sure I can ask this group, who is that? Mr. Gladstone, yes, William Ewart Gladstone, looking a little bit stern. But he was a patron that came to stay here in Penmaenmawr many, many times. Now, if Dennis was here, he'd tell me it was about 14 or 15, I think, but I can't quite remember. But so he made the place quite famous, as politicians, perhaps more so today, were quite revered about where they stayed and sort of had their bases. A lot of rich people came to live in Penmaenmawr. They had holiday homes here. Anybody that worked at Pilkington's or Pilk's Glassworks, as we know it, would have remembered the name there, but they had a holiday bungalow, sadly now gone, not far from the tunnel. So that was their holiday bungalow in Penmaenmawr. And then the Quarry in 1905, looking pretty much as it is sort of today as well. The top has gone off it by then, I think, and the jetty is still there. So we're famous not just as a place that's attractive to sort of richer people, but it had a working history as well, a thorough working history too. And then this is the Quarry, named the Penmaenmawr Welsh Granite Company Limited. From about 1878, it was owned by the Derbyshire family, and the Derbyshires had taken it over from the Neesons, I think, or I can't quite remember their name anyway. And they made a real go of it. They actually made this quarry sort of pay very, very handsomely. It employed around 1,000 men from the town. So, of course, not just 1,000 men, but there would have been shops and other services as well that fed into the quarry. So Penn never really suffered from any of the depressions and such like. There was always work here. Colonel Derbyshire, who was a sort of benign dictator, was the chairman, more about him later, and he had a very keen interest in all things military. He provided a drill hall. It is still there, but with a modern building, and a firing range that you can walk up to as well, that's still there too. And he was very instrumental. He got very interested in the Second Boer War in South Africa, 1899 to 1901. And he was very instrumental in setting up the company, the 6th Battalion, F Company, the 6th Battalion, Royal Welsh Fusiliers. And in the old cinema that runs along the arcade shops, he used to show cinematic sort of pictures of what was going on in South Africa at the time. So he got quite sort of captured by being things military. The Quarry, you'll recognise that from the museum, Penmaenmawr Welsh Granite Company Limited. So you can see that today in the museum. And here's Colonel Derbyshire at his home, Penmaenmawr. We've got Penmaenmawr Park a little bit further up the town. Sadly, the house was demolished, I think, in the 60s. And here he is in what looks like a tropical uniform as well. So this would probably be quite near to about 1914 too. There's Colonel Derbyshire with one of his grandchildren playing at something. The stone is still there, so you can go and recreate this picture anytime you want. And here's Colonel Derbyshire attempting to bayonet a child for some unknown reason. I don't think it happened. So. And here we have the Royal Welsh Fusiliers, F Company, 6th Battalion, RWF. And if you look at not the bottom row, but the second row, the tallest guy there on the right, 1, 2, 3, 4 in from the right, is Dennis's grandfather. So that's Private John William Jones. So, and Dennis always said to me that he was the tallest guy in the whole group there as well. So there we go. Now, I think it might have been slightly obligatory. These are territorials, of course, not regular soldiers. And with Colonel Derbyshire having such an interest in all things military, they're all quarry boys, they might have felt rather obliged. But I think they really enjoyed it because it got them out of the area. They went to summer camps, they went down to South Wales, they went further in, down to the middle of Wales, to Borth. And I think that they really enjoyed actually being part of a territorial force. Oh, sorry. It's me again. And this is the bane of an archivist's life because it's not captioned or annotated on the back, but there is a picture here of the 6th Battalion at summer camp in 1914. And this would have been round about August 1914, just before the war commenced. So the summer camp in 1914, the 6th Battalion left from Penn Station for a summer camp at Aberystwyth. It was actually at Borth, which is just a little bit further along the way, on the 25th of July 1914. For those of you that are interested in history, of course, it's not that long after Franz Ferdinand was assassinated at Sarajevo. It was a very unsettled camp because people were, I think, expecting a war to commence at any moment, okay? There were rumours of war all being declared, and there were soldiers there that would have re-enlisted straight away to go off to war as well. The commanding officer ordered the men to strike camp, which is very, very unusual. You don't strike a camp unless there is something, absolutely drastic going on at the time. And he struck the camp at 3:30 a.m. on the 2nd of August. So we're getting very, very near to the declaration of war here. And everybody returned home. That includes the quarry boys to Penmaenmawr for further orders. So at 7 a.m. on the 3rd of August 1914, they returned back to Penn. So the North Wales Weekly News had something to say about it on the 6th of August, and this is, of course, War was declared at midnight on the 4th of August 1914, so basically this is almost a day afterwards as well, isn't it? So Weekly News said, at Penmaenmawr there is widespread excitement, especially among the local terriers, that's the territorials, and their families. They were ordered to be in the drill hall Tuesday night, and they remained expecting a call until after midnight, some of them seeming eager for active service. Again, yesterday morning, the men wearing their uniforms were parading in the streets and had to respond to several calls during the day. I'd love to know what the calls were, I really would. Right, so we would recognise the same place today. We could walk down that and almost recognise exactly the same place. So this is where they were parading up and down and answering these calls for whatever was going on. So in August 1914, the Territorial Army was a force that was meant to protect this country and the shores of this country as well. It was never meant to go abroad. But they were very quickly mobilised once war was declared. Everybody, of course, thought the First World War was going to be over by Christmas, and we know that it wasn't. It was 1918. Their terms of enlistment for a territorial was initially just home service, but this changed to 3 years or the duration, and that includes service overseas as well. So these lads that joined the territorials, you know, quite happy to go to summer camps at Aberystwyth and such like, never really expected to find themselves in the midst of war, certainly not in Gallipoli. The Pen boys mustered at the Ship Inn, sadly now long gone. You can drive over it on the A55. And there were 3 territorial battalions, the 5th, 6th and 7th Royal Welsh Fusiliers, and they gathered at Badavon Fields in Llandudno, which you can still see there as well. There's lovely pictures of lots and lots of tents there, 5,000 odd men gathering there. By the 22nd of August, 4,500 men of the North Wales Infantry Brigade went into camp at Penmaenmawr under the command of Colonel Francis Lloyd. There's a Ship Inn, sadly long gone, many memories there. Steve, you used to stop there, didn't you, before going on your night shift? And then in August 1914, this mobilisation was really fast. So, gosh, you know, within a month, these boys, the Quarry boys, are leaving for training in Northampton. It was a 97% uptake as well. The 3% that didn't go probably had sick relatives or were possibly too old or somewhat. They embarked by train from the junction on the 29th of August 1914. And the Weekly News again says, the troops marched to Llandudno Junction station where trains were waiting to take them away. As each battalion passed through the town, they were given a hearty send-off. Never in the history of the junction has there been such excitement. Gifts were showered upon the men, people forsaking their own Sunday dinners and bringing it in on plates to the soldiers. And again, when you walk over that, you know, the station, you can almost feel that they were there at one point, because the station itself today is still so very old-fashioned. They get to Northampton, which of course is the other side of the world to anybody that's living here, really. They haven't been, I think, much farther than Chester one way and maybe, I don't know, Bangor the other. This is from Second Lieutenant Harold Owen. Harold Owen was an incredibly rich young man. Some of you here will remember Owen stores. If you're old enough, you'll remember them. And he had just inherited the whole fortune from his father. And he was in charge of all the operations. So they had a huge amount of property in London as well. So he's a very rich young man. And he writes home to his mother and he says, the people of Northampton are too splendid for words. When we go for a route march, the cottagers rush out with basketfuls of apples, jugs of milk, and the temptation is so great that the men on these hot and dusty days break ranks. I find it difficult to look after men after being used to boys. Some are all right, but others feeling ill after being treated in every pub by the townspeople the night before take a lot of handling. Well, of course, you know, they're away from their mothers, they're away from anybody looking at what they're doing, and of course, for the first time in their life, young men that never had any say in anything are being regarded as being important people. They are going to fight a war that will save the country. Okay. So here's Lieutenant Harold Owen. They lived up at Nodfa on the Conway Old Road. So that was their holiday home. Their main estate was in Garthgwynion, Machynlleth. Yeah. So that's him. Now you can see he's very, very young. He was about, I think, 20 when he took the boys to Northampton. So no wonder there was a little bit of difficulty trying to control them. Roughy, toughy quarry men and a sort of 19-year-old young man that had only been at Harrow School, they took a bit of handling, I think. So Rushden, where most of the boys went to and stayed and were billeted, really did welcome what they called the Welsh boys there. This is a mission church. If you didn't want to be treated at pubs, you could go to the mission church and write your letters home and they would give you a cup of tea. Also, they made a lot of friendships with families as well, sincere friendships. And this is some of the billeting there. You can see the family have come out. They've got 4 soldiers billeted with them. They've come out to take a family photograph with the dog and the baby. And of course, there was a lot of marriages as well. There was a lot of marriages, and Northampton's people still come to Penmaenmawr to trace their roots. Exploring the countryside, well, these two here look as though they have been on the other, on the receiving end of being treated, but you could hire, they're off duty, and they hired one of Charlie Robinson's premier motorbikes at 6pence a day to explore the Northamptonshire countryside, brackets, pubs. This is the 6th Royal Welsh Fusiliers officers at Rushden in June 1915. They had originally thought that they were going to go out to the meat grinder on the Western Front, but by June that they had been told that they were going to go to the Middle East, so to Gallipoli. And if you look at that bottom row, on the left bottom row seated is Frank Mills. He was the only one that really had some experience of soldiering. He was an engineer that had worked in Malaya for a long, long time on the rubber plantations, and he was second in command of F Troop for the 6th Battalion as well. If we go from Frank Mills, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the left is Major Gus Wheeler. Gus Wheeler was a quarry manager. It all went in rank. You know, the quarry owner was the colonel, the quarry manager was the major, the quarry doctor was the captain, and Lieutenant Owen, of course, was the subaltern as well. And then if we go to along the end, carry on along, going right now, the third one in is the quarry doctor there. These are pictures taken of the NCOs with their machine guns, Lewis guns, I think, in Rushden, June 1915. Again, sadly not annotated, so we've got, unless you can recognise somebody, we haven't got any idea who the men were, but probably there are quite a few quarry boys in that picture. And then the whole thing is, they were very well looked after, they were very well treated, but there was one snag in the whole thing. There was a murder, and it's called the Wilby tragedy. And it was a young man from the 6th Battalion. I think he originally came from Blaenau Ffestiniog, but had lived on Anglesey for a while. And his name was Private Owen Jones Evans. He was 28. They'd been out for a drink, him and a friend, and then things went drastically wrong. Nobody really has said in any of the reporting what happened, but there seemed to have been some sort of altercation with Maria Cole, who was a widow. She was 50 on the 26th of June 1915. He was remanded in custody on the 16th of July. He didn't speak much English, and he was appointed an interpreter, Lieutenant Roberts, who I've never quite found out who that guy actually is, because there were so many Roberts, even officers, that it's very difficult to understand who it is. He probably saved Lieutenant Roberts' life, because he had to stay behind, and he wasn't obviously in the first group that went out to Gallipoli. He went out in September later on. Private Evans was sentenced to penal servitude, 6 years. He did his service. I think he came out about 1 year early, and then went to live back on Anglesey as well. So that was the one thing, perhaps the one blip in the whole event, this murder of Maria Cole. So we're off to Gallipoli now. This is an embarkation parade for the Royal Welsh Fusiliers in the whole to go off to Gallipoli, embarkation, and Rushden, Northampton saw them off very, very well. There they are going through Wellingborough Road. That's 1915, by the way, that's a mistake. And they left from Irchester Station. Sadly, I went to see if that was still there, and the building, which looks lovely, has been knocked down. But they left from Irchester on the 13th of July. And Harold Owen writes home to his mother again. He noted that after a tremendous send-off, 50% of the Welsh boys were drunk. They go off, they sail to the Middle East on the Caledonia. And they're a little bit sort of, unfortunately, they have to share the boat with the North Wales Brigade, which would have been all the top rankers and such like in there. So they were a little bit, I think, looked upon by the higher-ups and had to behave themselves on board. And off they go on the 14th of July, 1915 as well. Now, these are places they couldn't have dreamed of seeing or being at. They were allowed off at Alexandria. The officers could go off at Malta, but nobody got off at Gibraltar. So they hit Gibraltar the Rock on July the 17th. By July the 21st, they were in Malta. The officers were able to go off and get their post and the post for the boys. And in Alexandria, they all came off the boat while it refueled, and they marched up and down the town. They didn't have a very good opinion of Alexandria while they were there. They weren't there for 2 days, I think. Now, Colonel Derbyshire, I said we'd come back to him. Colonel Derbyshire wanted to lead his men into battle, but Colonel Derbyshire was 70 years old at that point. So the Ministry of Defence or the War Office at the time said, well, thanks, Colonel Derbyshire. You know, here's a man that's never had no said to him as well. You know, we don't quite, need 70-year-olds going into battle. Oh, he's having none of that. He went down, followed the boys he caught a ship, followed the boys, eventually ended up in Alexandria, bought himself from a tailor's a private's uniform and tried to sneak onto the boat afterwards. Once again, he was found out. This time he held his hands up and says, okay, that's it, Gov. And he came back eventually to Penmaenmawr. I think I say in the next, not in the next one, but he came back to Penmaenmawr and he served on the Pensions Committee and supported the town thoroughly throughout the war as well. Again, as I said, I don't think anyone had ever said no to him before. So, right, for those of you that want a little 5-minute sleep, this is a little bit of history here, an overview of the Gallipoli campaign. So what the heck were we doing in this place? What were we there for? So in 1915, there was deadlock on the Western Front. And basically, this sort of instigated by the Russians, because they were very, very worried that the Germans would take over their Black Sea ports. And they had a reason to be worried as well, because sort of going around, marching around the Middle East and things, the Kaiser had made very good friends with the Ottoman Empire as well. And the Germans were inciting Intifada, which is, of course, a holy war on what would be the British. And there was a gentleman called Richard Vasbus of Persia, and he was known as the German T.E. Lawrence, and he was just as exciting as, did all these sort of madcap things as well. If you ever want to read a book that tells you a little bit about it, John Buchan's Green Mantle is the sequel to the 39 Steps, and it gives you a fantastic outlook on what was going on at the time. First Lord of the Admiralty was Winston Churchill, who gets blamed quite a lot for Gallipoli, but he's one of many, I think, that can take some of the sort of blame for it. And Lord Kitchener at this point was still alive. He had lost his life on the Hampshire in 1915. They appointed, the gentleman in charge of it was Sir Ian Hamilton, who had a really good record of war in South Africa. Twice he'd been recommended for the Victoria Cross. But it's worth remembering at this point that the Western Front in 1915 was probably the worst year of the army in World War I, because the battles, they were defeated in all battles. So an awful lot of the generals that may have been perhaps a bit younger, a bit more up to the job, a bit more modern-minded, were out there on the Western Front. But Sir Ian Hamilton was recommended to take charge of the forces going to the Middle East. The first attempt was to force the Dardanelles is the straits heading up to Constantinople, which is modern day, what is it? Istanbul. Thank you, Gav. And 3 Allied battleships were lost to Turkish mines. So Kitchener again says to Hamilton, you've got 70,000 men. You're now going to do what officially sometimes people call the first D-Day. A landing. There's never been done before, a huge amount of men landing on a foreign shores to try to fight their way up to Constantinople. 29th Division was a regular division, and they landed at Helles on the 25th of April 1915. And there were beaches S, W, V, Y and X. The one that you'll probably all know is Anzac Cove right at the top as well. The Anzac troops were it's a little bit further up, and you'll see it on the map when we have a look, where their objectives were Saribau Heights. They never got it. They overshot the landing at Galba Tepe, and then they landed on the heavily defended beach at Ariburno, which is a very, very small beach, incredibly small. When you go to Gallipoli, and I've been lucky enough to go there, you realise how small the area is. It's not a very big area to do any fighting whatsoever. Turkish troops, of course, in that area were led by Colonel Mustafa Kemal, who became Kemal Ataturk, the founder of modern Turkey. Hunter Weston, very, very controversial character, had a poor reputation and really didn't, at the end of the day, make much of an inroad into the Helles Point. They tried to move northwards. There were 3 battles in April, May and June, all failed with terrific casualties. They never captured Krithia at all, that's in the middle. There was an attack on Gully Ravine in June 1915, attack on Achibaba in July, and they never reached Achibaba either. And this just tells you, it just resulted in, once again, trench warfare. And these are the Royal Irish Fusiliers. I just love the face of that guy looking at me there. Once again, they're entrenched. Nobody's moving anywhere. They're in a foreign land, and they're in exactly the same position as they are on the Western Front as well. So no breakthrough, no capture of the peninsula, no sailing up the Dardanelles to capture Constantinople and to sort of end the war from the underbelly. So, so this is the bottom part. If you look on the left bottom, that is Helles. And then you see the next, if you go up the left side, you'll see lots and lots of places named there. That's where the Australians are trying to hold on to. And then we're going to go up to Suvla Bay, which is right at the top, which is the bay where the Quarry boys landed. So this is where we get to. So there's nothing happening. They've been on, since April, they've been on the peninsula, the Gallipoli Peninsula, and we're now August. Nothing has happened. Krithia hasn't been taken. It's a deadlock, and there is one last attempt to try and break this deadlock and to actually take the peninsula and sail up to Constantinople. So 5 divisions were added to Hamilton's forces, and these divisions were commanded by Frederick Stopford, who is known as the Dugout. He was a general. There were no spare generals with modern experience. He never had any war experience. He'd done a little bit of active service in Nigeria, but he didn't have much war experience at all. They planned to link the beachhead at Suvla with Anzac. There was going to be diversionary attacks. The Anzacs at Lone Pine, all these are very famous names to anybody that's got any Australian connections. And then, of course, the final battle that we look at on the 7th of August is the Neck. And if you see the film with a very young Mel Gibson in it, that's the one that Gallipoli is based on as well. There's a lot of inaccuracies in that there. So we get to Suvla Bay, just before the Quarry boys land. The first landings are on the 6th and 7th of August 1915. The Yorkshires, actually, with severe losses, have a bridgehead there. They secure the beaches. Green Hill and Chocolate Hill are taken. You'll see pictures of those later, but not held. Stopford, though, didn't consolidate the positions. He should have done that. There were no Turkish troops of any number there to stop them, and he just spends most of his time on his motor yacht, the Jonquil. Very, very lightly defended. They really should have gone on and taken that and consolidated. The Quarry boys would have had a much easier day on the 10th of August if that had happened. So General Stopford gives the Turks time to bring reinforcements. Here we go. So this is the Quarry boys, were part of the 53rd Division, Welsh Division, and they landed at Sea Beach, Suvla Bay on the 9th of August 1915. They landed quite early in the day. And then they went into action on the 10th of August 1915. The 10th of August 1915 for North Wales down into Mid Wales is the bloodiest day of the whole war, of the whole 1914-18 war for this area. You can go to any war memorial, even small war memorials in small villages, and you will probably find a Gallipoli casualty. A quarter of the names on our war memorial at Gallipoli casualties. So their objectives were to take Green Hill, Chocolate Hill, lovely names, aren't they, Scimitar Hill, and then going on to take the Anafarta Ridge. You'll see that on a map in a moment. But the indecision of General Stopford not to advance, the Turks then had time to bring in reinforcements, and I think you probably know how that ends. So there we go. Suvla Bay, this is a map that was drawn at the time. There were no trench maps, no decent maps. They were working on maps. They were working from maps from classical editions of the Odyssey and things like that. So they're landing at Sea Beach. If you look at the bay, Sea Beach is just underneath it. And they are supposed to take all these little hills here. You can see Hill 69, Green Hill, Chocolate Hill, Scimitar Hill and all that. They have to cross the Salt Lake. And the Salt Lake is, it's never dry. It's like porridge. And at that point, from all those hills, the Turkish group, the Turkish army that had grouped in the hills were constantly firing big artillery shells, little artillery shells, anything they could get their hands off, throwing stones at them if they had to as well. So that advance to take those hills was really, I think, bound not to succeed. So, outcome. We'll go on to some personal sort of accounts of it in a minute. Suvla was a disaster due to the lack of early consolidation, which we've talked about. There was another attempt to take Çanakkale, that fails. The Gurkhas were part of that. On the 21st of August, another attempt to take Hill 60 and Scimitar Hill. Sir Ian Hamilton was actually relieved of his command, and so was General Stopford for really the hash that they'd made of it as well. Charles Monroe immediately recommends that the Allies should evacuate the peninsula. So all those men that had been killed, they have got absolutely nowhere. Nothing. It did nothing to further the war in 1915. Troops were evacuated from the Gallipoli Peninsula between December 1915 and January 16, and ironically, hardly any lives were lost. The evacuation was almost perfect. So, Quarry boys then. We've got a selection of letters sent home and diary entries from Captain Frank Mills, which you saw, he was at the bottom left. Lieutenant Owen Owen, we know young Mr. Owen Owen, who was Harrow educated and rather a delicate young man. Malcolm Trustram Eve eventually ended up as Lord Silsoe. He has written a book and some letters are in there with it. He's a little bit sort of, he's quite a difficult character to like. But the diary of Private R.J. Davis and Private Richard Jones were pen boys. So, let's have a look. Richard Jones says, Lemnos is where they were anchored at Lemnos just before they sailed over to Suvla Bay. Lemnos is a dusty, dreary, stony place. The villages are very uninteresting, food awful, and water shocking. Captain Mills says, we all got bad diarrhea, really bad. And it's always interesting to see that a remark by an officer is backed up by a remark by another rank as well. So, well, here our great sickness started. They all got diarrhea. We had to carry some of the boys down to the beach to wash, while others were sleeping alongside the latrines who could not get away. Diary of Private Richard Jones. On the 30th, we landed at Lemnos Isle, a barren place, water very scarce. A few villages could be seen lying about, but they were all out of bounds. It didn't stop some of them getting drunk on ouzo, by the way. There seems to be thousands of troops here. Diary of R.J. Davis. 2 men from my platoon had wandered off to a nearby village, got fighting drunk on the local spirit ouzo. They had caused havoc, and at dawn a crowd arrived, dragging and pushing the men into camp. They were still almost unconscious from drink, and that is Lord Silsoe's account of it. This is Richard Jones's account. We sailed from Lemnos Bay on the 8th. On the way, I wrote my will down in my pay book. So it's getting a bit serious now. I think what started off as a bit of an escapade, you know, oh, we're all going off together, that's great, has got a little bit more serious now. We reached Suvla Bay when it was getting dark. We didn't go ashore this Sunday evening, but slept on the deck of the ship. And the order was that we were not to smoke, because they were still firing artillery at night. From this place, you could hear the rifle fire, and the ships were firing on the mountainside in front of us. So again, it's getting much more serious. This is an original landing order there, and I'll just bring you to look at the 200 rounds of small arms ammunition per rifle. It's not a huge amount. 3,500 rounds for a machine gun, and 2 lots of iron rations per officer and men. The one thing that's missing on them, the one thing that they were desperate for when they landed, even after a few hours, is no water. And water was scarcer than, unicorn's horns or something like that when you're out there as well. So that's an original landing order. So, Sea Beach, Suvla Bay. The Penn boys landed on Sea Beach around 3 a.m. By this point, they'd had no letters from home. They'd only had a sort of tea and some hardtack. They hadn't had a proper meal. They were very tired, and I presume very, very scared as well. So Richard Jones says, I went ashore on the first boat in which Major Wheeler was in. Remember, he's the quarry manager. I had rather a big load to carry, and Major Wheeler helped me to get it ashore on the other side and told me to sit down. Frank Mills says, later we moved to a place behind Lullababa, just behind the battery in action. We had little food, but had a cup of tea. The heat during the day was very great, but nights were very cold. Wheeler came to sleep near me. How cold and miserable it all was. So Captain Mills says again, about 6 p.m. that evening, Wheeler, Arthur Davis and I all went down to have a swim in the sea. We had discarded our packs that only had what we stood in, thin drill. But Roberts was from Penmaenmawr as well, Wheeler's servant, produced a small towel we all used. Next day, Wheeler and Arthur Davis were killed. What a night we had. So this is Arthur Davis. He's from Anglesey. And again, he's an older gentleman that had some idea of fighting, but not a huge amount of experience. His home is on Trefos in Anglesey. You can still go and see it. It's a school now. And that's his memorial tablet in one of the churches near there. And then this is Captain Mills telling you what it was like to go into battle. We started off in column of route across the Salt Lake in broad daylight to the attack and were shelled to blazes. I often wonder who was responsible for that terrible mistake before we got across. I had lost all my subalterns but one, and I did not see him for 3 days. The men were splendid, but of course our casualties were appalling. We fought all day and got well forward to the left of Chocolate Hill. Meanwhile, the front was all on fire. That evening, the rifle, machine gun and big shell fire was awful, and I only had 24 men left out of 180. So that's Frank Mills you can see, he looks a tough old boy, doesn't he? He's in the middle. The chap on the left of him is a chap called Second Lieutenant Vivian de Sola Pinto. It's quite a mouthful, but he became a very, very big friend of Sigrid Sassoon, the war poet, in later years during the war, and they served together in the 25th Battalion, Royal Welsh Fusiliers. Don't know who the other guy is. So, Private Richard Jones says, we went on till we came to the Salt Lake. Remember, that's a lake that's a lake of porridge, big lake. There was no cover at all, and it was very muddy. The Turks were starting to shell us, and I could see shells dropping in the middle of our boys. A little further on, we came to a bush, and we attended some wounded there. Thinking to myself, I thought my last day had come as the bullets were dropping alongside of us. Here I saw Dick Williams wounded, a very bad wound too. We put him to lay on one of the stretchers. The poor lad was shouting for his mother. There was poor hopes for him. And there's Dick Williams. They lived in Capilello. House is still there. Walked past it many times with the dogs and can never not think about he lost his brother later on as well. So he died of wounds the following day on the 11th of August on our war memorial. R.J. Davis says, on the 10th we went into action. Before we reached the trenches we were under heavy fire. There was no cover at all. Several of our chaps dropped, including our captain. The Turks were on the hills in trenches. We could not see them. Our chaps were dropping everywhere, both sides of me. Poor Jack Williams, my pal, was killed early in the day. Several officers have been injured. The dead are all over the place. We have been behind a hedge all night. Bullets flying everywhere. Who would have thought a year backwards, 1914, they were just about to go off to Northampton. A year later, the Quarry boys were dying on the beaches of Suvla Bay. So there we go. I'm terrible for putting lots and lots of maps in, but again, it gives you some ideas. Lullababa, the Salt Lake, Chocolate Hill, trying to get to Scimitar Hill, all of that done under fire and not achieved either. Another map. So let's get on to some of the characters. So this is Major Gus Wheeler, Augustus Wheeler. He is the quarry manager. He's born in London originally and lived in Cornwall, met his wife in Cornwall, and he came to work for the Derbyshires well before World War I started. So he was killed on the 10th of August. They'd been ordered by General Stopford to do a bayonet attack at 5 p.m. in the afternoon. Now, bearing in mind that I've told you that they went into action very early in the morning, they must have been absolutely exhausted and very, very frightened by that point and running out of ammunition as well. So he led the Penn Quarry boys, what was left of them, in a bayonet attack at about 5 p.m. that evening. And I'll have to talk to you about the sword afterwards if you don't mind, Jen. So he lost his life on the 10th of August. And there he is. This is at Penmaenmawr as well. He's on his horse. Thankfully, we think the family think he didn't take the horse out there, but the sword is there that he took with him to Gallipoli. Very handsome, very, very good man. The men, I think, respected him. This is Harold Owen. He went on. He survived the landings at Suvla Bay. He was shot in the elbow. He went home to recuperate in London in a very, very posh hospital. And then whilst he was there, I think he attracts bad luck. It was bombed by a Zeppelin and he nearly lost his life again. He ran out of luck just after World War I ended. He was killed in the Abermule rail incident on the 26th of January. And I think that is still one of the worst rail accidents in Wales, I think. Corporal David John Roberts from Water Street. Corporal Roberts was wounded on the 10th and died of his wounds in Malta. So he survived getting back to a hospital and survived only to the 28th of August. And he's one of the very few quarry boys that has got a grave in the Pieta Military Cemetery in Malta. These, you'll know that place, that's the Lads Club in Capelello, Durgavolchi Lads Club. Every single one of those boys there served, the majority of them quarry boys at Gallipoli as well. So, and you can see Bob Williams, we'll get to him in a minute, was killed in action. Wallace Moody was killed in action as well. So several were prisoners of war later on as well. Sergeant John Howard Jones, sergeant there, he was from, I think, Erasmus Street. He was killed in action as well, had this lovely photograph taken before he went off into action. And this is John Willie Lunt, that's who I mentioned with the football. He landed at Gallipoli as well. He was a Penn Bluebird, which was at that point the football team for Penmaenmawr. So he was wounded in his left shoulder and he was sent back. He's the one right at the bottom in the middle. So crikey, I mean, he's only a young lad there, isn't he really? He transfers to the South Wales Borderers and he was killed in action on the 16th of August 1917 on the Western Front. William Hugh Williams from High Street, 13th of August 1915, commemorated on the Helles Memorial, 20 years old, Penn Quarry boy. And this is the youngest. Major Wheeler was the oldest at 44, and this is the youngest casualty as well. Sometimes he's listed as 18, sometimes as 19. I can't quite get to the real date of birth. So initially he's believed missing, but he was actually killed in action. In the chaos that everybody was in, they couldn't really make any sense of who was there and who was not. He was aged 19, he's the youngest casualty. He had a brother serving in the trenches in the Royal Engineers that survived the war, and he's commemorated on the Helles Memorial as well. Two brothers. We've already met Dick on the right that was killed or died on the 11th of August, but Robert, his brother, was shot by a sniper on the 12th of November 1915. And as we said, Dick Williams died on the 11th of August 1915. Unofficially, and I can't sort of corroborate it with any known source, is that I think his mother was very near to suicide, or did actually commit suicide. It's a story I can't pin down, so we don't know. I told you that eventually it all petered out in August. Nothing happened much in September, and by December, January, they were evacuating the troops from the Gallipoli Peninsula. That's a picture I took of Suvla Bay today, and it always strikes me how, without the mountain at the back, how similar it looks to Penmaenmawr. They would have, I think they would have noticed that. I'm sure they would have noticed that. There's Graig Lwyd, of course, where the boys would have worked. And there's Graglewyd Hall, where Major Wheeler lived. Moylus, of course, they would have walked up there as well many, many times. Erasmus Street, apparently once the news came through, every street suffered a casualty, either killed or wounded as well, and the curtains were drawn for all the houses as well. Once the news came through, it must have been awful. It took about a week for it all to come through. New York cottages, when we first started our research, we were at New York cottages, and we had our first little Blue Peter exhibition in about 2000, Dennis and I, where we wrote everything out and put little pictures up and things like that. So that's where our first exhibition on the Quarry Boys was. That is Scimitar Hill. When I went to Gallipoli, I went with quite a few different people, but a couple of them were army officers, and they stood there and they couldn't work out what Scimitar Hill was in a nice calm day without anybody firing at them. So how the Quarry Boys and anybody leading them was supposed to know where it was. You can see it's a dip, but very, very difficult. That's Lullabarber Cemetery, and that's the nearest I could get to where the Quarry Boys landed. And we took a wreath with us. I went with my friend Bridget, and we took a little bit of the quarry. If they never came back to the quarry, we brought a bit of quarry to them. And we said to the Penmaenmawr Quarry Boys, they died a long way from their beautiful mountain home. And that's still there, apparently. Somebody told me it was still there this year, so good. That's 10 years ago we went there. The Helles Memorial is a fantastic memorial on the tip of the Helles Peninsula. And most of the Quarry Boys don't have a known grave, only the gentleman that died in Malta, but the names of all the Quarry Boys are on the Helles Memorial. This was our second, we're getting good at this now. This is the second Blue Peter one that we did in 2005, the 90th anniversary of Gallipoli, and this was Dennis and I. I mean, I couldn't have done this without him, I really could not. And he was a much neater writer than me as well. But that attracted quite a lot of information coming in after the event as well. This is the 100th anniversary. Now, you know, we've got quite posh here because Welsh Government gave us a nice sum of money to tour the exhibition, The Welsh at Gallipoli, starting here in Penmaenmawr. The First Minister came. That's two friends of mine that are standing by. We had lots of boards and things. You can access this, by the way, on, oh crikey, I can't think of the website. I'll give it to you and you can pop it on the thing. But that's still accessible today. Dennis and I wrote all the boards for it as well. The First Minister laid a wreath, and that's at the War Memorial there, as you can see. And the wreath consists of, it's looking a little bit sort of a bit older there, but it consists of the heather from the top of the mountain, and it was made by a lovely David, wasn't it, from Beaumaris on the island as well. And we thought that would commemorate the heather for the Quarry Boys as well. The Heroes Arch in Bangor by the university is rarely open, but I did manage to get in there once, and it does list the Penmaenmawr boys. So some names missing as well. That's the Jerusalem Chapel War Memorial. So that's one in Penn, that's for a church. Memorial window in St. Cyril's Church as well. We were able to take some photographs of that whilst it was still open. And we shouldn't really forget that there was a school here as well, a very sort of small prep school, which was quite a lot of people from Manchester had holiday homes here. And Merton Park School, this is the war memorial for the boys that lost their lives there. And I think about half a dozen of them lost their life at Gallipoli as well, because the 6 Manchesters were very, very much involved in the Gallipoli campaign. That's our war memorial as well, Until the Day Dawns, beautiful war memorial. And these are the St. Gwynan's war memorials. There's 62 names on the main war memorial, and if you count, take away the overlap and all the other ones, there are 72 names in total that we know about. There probably are more. Not everybody wanted their name or their son's name on a war memorial, or had moved away or had died for some reason before they could ask to be put on their son's name on it. If you look at 72 names times 10% is 720. That would have been 720, 10% died. That's quite a lot to come from a small town as well. So, and we mustn't forget, of course, that the Quarry boys aren't the only names on the war memorial. There are many, many more as well that died just as far away in Salonika, Palestine, on the Western Front. That is another story to tell you maybe one of these days. And then this is taken from where I live. This is really the words that I like to use as well. They lie a long way from their beautiful mountain home. And there's a little bit of the heather that we were talking about in full bloom for the memorial. Somebody went, before I went out, a friend of mine went out and brought me back a Gallipoli poppy. And then I'll end the talk with, I have tried to do my duty, so nothing else matters. The unknown comment made by, or the comment made by an unknown 6th Battalion Quarry boy, probably, because other Quarry boys noted it, that died unknown, shot by a sniper in Gallipoli as well. I hope that concludes my talk. I'm very, very happy to try and answer any questions. And, you know, in memory of some fantastic lads, really, it gives you an idea of those names on the war memorial next time you walk past. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
A bit hot and sweaty, that.
Yeah, what a wonderful talk. What a wonderful message.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
And does anyone have any questions for Anne?
Happy to try anything.
No? Nobody wants to ask about their great-grandfather?
Is there any way of tracing on, local people that were in the First World War just by their place they lived and their date of birth? Is it getting their service record or anything?
Yeah, yes, there is. I mean, the awful thing to say is that if somebody died, they're the easiest ones to trace. The best way to do something like that is to get yourself down to the bigger archives, isn't it? In Llandudno, are they still? Or yes. Conway.
Conway and Bangor.
And Bangor.
Conway Archives.
And then to have a look at the papers. Because the sort of local papers here were very sort of late to start mentioning that the men, who had gone off to war. I just have a feeling that we were on the sort of edge here of the country, and nobody really thought they were going anywhere for a while. But it was a little bit like dominoes. Once it started, it really started. People were very quickly sent abroad and such like, especially the Western Front as well, which was, I keep on saying, a meat machine, a meat grinder. And but your local papers, I think, are your first. If you've got any relatives that might remember something. Any medals, if you've got a medal